Klon, Leandra says hesitantly. You know you are no match for me. Her aura shines bright green. How could you have done this, Klon? Stand down. Leandra takes a few steps back as Klon transforms into a large monster with huge claws protruding from his hands. Klon, Leandra says, disappointment in her voice. In his new form, Klon swipes at Leandra with his gigantic claws. Leandra twirls through the air between his strikes, dodging every attack. Stand down! Leandra shouts. She shoots a gust of wind at Klon, knocking him back. She moves at intense speed, driving her foot into Klon's face. He crashes to the ground, destroying several control panels, but quickly regains his footing. Leandra hears garbled noises coming from his mouth, nothing she can understand. Down goes the feral cat! Rachel yells. She throws a metallic ball that explodes into a rain of electricity around Dabu. Insects! Dabu roars. Mava runs from behind Dabu and kicks him directly on his spine, causing him to bend over in pain. He reaches over and swipes at Mava, but she's sent backward by Leandra channeling wind at her. Wid throws a silver crystal at Dabu's feet, causing the ground to become slippery and wet. Once again, Dabu falls to the ground, this time face first. Dabu's thugs come from behind and surround them. Their laser pistols trained on the group. Angel, Rachel, Wid, and Mava hold up their hands in surrender. Enough! Leandra yells. She pushes out her hands, and a gust of wind blows the thugs into buildings, knocking them unconscious. She sees Dabu rising again, reaching for his weapon. Leandra holds her hand out in anger and sends wind so powerful that Dabu flies into a dilapidated home. The building collapses on top of him. Leandra wakes to darkness. Everyone is still asleep. She goes to the elevator balcony, fully windowed, and looks out at the mostly submerged city. She feels darkness all around and thinks about who she is. Leandra hears the elevator coming up from floor 12 while they are on floor 66. Mava walks up behind her. Can't sleep? Mava asks. No. I want Jindai to trust me, but I feel bad I can't open up to her as much as she did with us, Leandra says. I'm trying to remember, and at times I see flashes of the past, but for some reason I just can't remember how I ended up in the desert. Don't worry. Tomorrow we'll go to the monk village and figure things out, Mava says. What about you, Mava? Leandra asks. What about after this? What will you do? Mava stays silent, contemplating. Then they hear a ding, and the elevator reaches their level. It opens, and there is no one inside. Leandra feels a sinking sensation in her stomach. At the royal palace, Colonel Femi drops a hunk of metal on the ground. What a worthless piece of crap! Femi yells. Femi's wristband wanes with light. Pharaoh? What is going on with the Guardian and her friend? The Pharaoh asks angrily. They're almost apprehended. I'll be up there soon, Femi states. Colonel Femi walks up the palace tower stairs. At the top, she passes Princess Aine's door. Aine is trying on the dress Colonel Femi left in her closet earlier. Aine glances over and notices that Femi can see her wearing it. Aine looks at Femi with vulnerable eyes. "Ain," Femi asks, "did I startle you?" No, you didn't," Ain says, looking down at herself and the dress. "What a beautiful dress," Femi says. "I know. I wonder where it came from," Ain asks. That kind of threading, I don't know," Femi says. "All I know is that dress is fit for a queen," Femi adds. She leaves the doorway and continues upstairs, where she runs into the twins again. "If you're planning on bothering Ain, she's busy," Femi says.
"Are you going to stop us if we do?"
The twins ask. "Of course not. I'm not royalty," Femi says. "What's that in your hands?"
"None of your business,"
the twins say in unison.
"We're going to show our sister."
Colonel Femi stands silently, lost in thought for a moment. "Good idea," Femi replies as she continues up the staircase. Osmond rushes to the control panels, holding the prisoners. He releases the controls, and the captives begin to fall from their cells. His crew catches them as they drop. "Go, go, go!" Osmond shouts. His people race toward the ship, carrying the prisoners. "No!" Leandra yells into her headpiece. "Put them on the freighter ship B798L!" "What?" Osmond shouts back. "Just do it!" Leandra yells, still holding the creatures at bay. They inch closer as Osmond signals his people to load the prisoners onto the nearby ship. "They're on the ship!" Osmond yells. "Now go!" Leandra demands. "Get on your ship and get out of here! Hurry!" Osmond pauses, looking at Leandra, then nods. He signals his team to board. Leandra and Mava watch as his freighter lifts off and disappears from view. Leandra feels her arms weakening. "Run!" Mava shouts, grabbing Leandra's arm. Leandra drops her arms and runs with Mava, Vorsha's amulet clutched in Mava's hand. They barely make it onto the ship labeled B798L before the creatures engulf the industrial building. The freighter lifts off, soaring out of the Cairo region. As they head toward the monk village, Rondage pauses to catch her breath, remembering the events she's about to explain. Earth was not in great shape, and Cairo was one of the few cities in Africa that millions of people had been flocking to. They came here to find homes and opportunities. Gigantic skyscrapers had been erected to keep people out of possible flood zones if the polar ice caps fully melted. Leandra turns to Mava, not sure what she meant by the ice caps. Mava signals Leandra to wait and not interrupt Rondage. Rondage continues. "I was a powerful diplomat at that time for Egypt. I was working with other countries to try to have Egypt join a larger union of democracies. I thought this could help keep the peace on the planet and maintain some type of economic stability. At that time, Gahiji worked as a military informant and advisor. When I ran for president, the odds were stacked against me. I knew if I didn't get elected, the new Egyptian government would probably not join the union with the other countries. I knew they would ultimately run themselves into the ground with more poverty and desperation." Rondage looks down for a moment, and tears begin flowing down her cheeks. "Though my heart was in the right place, I looked for any way possible to win the presidency. I did things, even though they were against my conscience. I heard from Gahiji that there was alien contact from Mars. Gahiji found a way for us to contact the aliens and told me they might be able to help us. At first, I was in utter disbelief. But then I was presented with a holographic message from a cat-like being, which initially frightened me. I became less resistant to the idea of these aliens actually existing. The being in the hologram named Dabu offered us power beyond belief and the right to reign over all Egypt. Not just Egypt, but the neighboring lands. I was cautious, but we accepted this exchange. Rondage grabs Ain's and Gehiji's hands for support. They both clasp their hands tighter, with Rondage's as she continues her story. Just as we accepted this offer, we felt our minds being transported into another place. We seemed to be in another dimension, pulled in by our willingness to accept Dabu's offer. On this plane, a strange, dark cloud-like being hovered above us and dominated our minds. At the same time, it imbued us with powerful dark energies. When we returned to our senses back on Earth, we quickly started to lose our sense of ourselves and what we used to stand for. Peace. We indoctrinated other dark agents, and those agents scared off my presidential opponents. Rondage lets go of their hands and looks directly at Leandra. Not long after winning the presidency, reports came in that Mars was under attack by an alien presence. I quickly realized what I had done, and I was moments away from completely losing control of myself, along with Gehiji. Eventually, I could no longer control my own mind, as Chaos and its army came closer to Earth. When Chaos finally arrived, our children had already been imbued with dark energies. Our dark agents had completely taken over Egypt and the countries surrounding us. We crowned ourselves the new supreme rulers, King and Queen of Egypt. When they get to the far end of the room by the gate, they see a new hologram of Horacian speaking. "My love, I can't go on like this. Why should I go on?" Horacian falls to the floor and sobs uncontrollably. What is that?" Horacian turns around, and a horde of people from the city start moving toward him with primitive melee weapons. Horacian yells at them, asking them to stop, but they do not. "Stop!" Horacian grabs a weapon and shoots each of the people attempting to attack him. Only one other man remains standing. "Why are you doing this?" Horacian shouts angrily. The man stops for a moment, then charges at Horacian with his weapon. Horacian raises his weapon and shoots the man, turning him into dust. Horacian falls back to the floor, crying, and the hologram ends. "What is going on?" Leandra cries out. When Mava reaches the door, she realizes it is locked. She searches frantically for another way out, but finds none. "Get away from me!" she screams as the cloud moves closer and closer. She drops to the ground, frightened by the cold air creeping toward her. For a moment, she closes her eyes and concentrates. "You are not getting me today." When she opens her eyes, a surge of energy flows through her body and a reddish aura surrounds her. The cloud is nearly upon her. She brings her hands together and unleashes a powerful beam that incinerates it. As she fires, parts of the cloud dissipate, growing smaller each time she strikes it. She continues until only a single grayish spirit remains. The spirit rushes toward her, and she dodges it, firing whenever she can. "I don't know who or what you are, but you never should have messed with me," Mava says, looking at the spirit before blasting it one final time with a photon burst. The cloud disappears in a flash of light. She aims her fingers at the locked door and blasts it open. "Are you willing to check that out, Vorsha?" Leandra asks. "Of course," Vorsha says, and hovers up through the ventilation shaft. "Be careful and make some noise if you get into any trouble," Leandra tells her. Vorsha travels through the shaft to the other side of the wall. She cannot see anything and uses her corporeal form to generate light, though she can only sustain it for a short time. She solves a puzzle and finds a way to turn on some dim lighting inside the room. There's a tomb in the middle of the room with decorative art all around it. Vorsha attempts to look inside the sarcophagus, but it's sealed shut. She looks at the largest wall in front of her and sees a tall engraving of Isis. The eyes on Isis begin to flare as though coming alive. Vorsha is removed from her consciousness outside the amulet and returns to the spiritual plane. What appears to be the deity Isis stands before her. "What am I doing here?" Vorsha asks, unsure of her surroundings. Isis tells her that she is indeed Isis and requests that Vorsha continue with Leandra, Mava, and Jindai until they completely liberate the planet. She explains that Vorsha is greatly needed and that this temple is the key to accomplishing their goals, but it cannot be used now. They must eventually find a way to use it. She jumps forward, diving into the large pool of water. Jindai swims deep and forward toward a different part of the water where she thinks she can escape Grandel. She surfaces in a new area, looks below her, and sees something billowing with energy and light. She dives down and grabs a small trinket that fits in the palm of her hand, slowly blinking blue light. In milliseconds, hundreds of years of Earth's history flood her mind. She sees when chaos first came to Earth and the untenable living situation for humans afterward. Dictators still rule much of the planet, though people fight against them. Wars continue across the world, and pollution is out of control. She sees the faces of millions who want more for the world, a better place to live. When Jindai sees the faces of children being born into this world, she pulls away from the item, and it dissolves in the water. She closes her eyes, attempting to cry underwater. The Earth. Evil has ruled our planet for too long, even before chaos arrived, it seems. She eventually finds the little girl on the lake floor without any gear. She sees her pointing back toward the lake shore. As soon as Leandra turns to signal the team, the girl vanishes. Leandra looks at Slinky and points to where the girl stood. Slinky shrugs and continues swimming. Leandra hears the girl again. Vorsha also hears her, a quiet voice in her mind saying,
"You're running away, aren't you?"
Vorsha shivers. The voice returns.
"You haven't escaped. You've only put yourself in a cage."
Vorsha concentrates on blocking out the voice from her mind.
How is she doing this? Who am I hearing in my mind?
A rock creature lifts a large boulder, then throws it directly at Jindai. "No!" Jindai shouts, exuding her sonic powers. The rock explodes into pieces in front of her. A sharp piece flies toward her cheek and slices it. "Ow!" Jindai grabs the side of her face, covering the bleeding. Mava shouts as well, firing beams of photons in multiple directions. Leandra lifts her hands and creates a tornado that encompasses all the visible rock creatures. The creatures start to float in the air with the winds, but the device remains sunken into the ground. "I meant what I said earlier," Vorsha shouts. "Get away from that thing!" Leandra swipes her hand forward, pushing the rock creatures back toward the ground. She takes a brief moment to regain her strength. She looks in horror as the creatures get back to their feet, completely unfazed by their attacks. Leandra creates another orb of wind around everyone, and they all hover back into the air. More rocks are hurled toward them by the creatures, but Mava, Jindai, and Vorsha all fire upon the rocks, exploding them into tiny pieces. "Good thing I've been practicing!" Mava shouts as they rise further into the air and through the tunnels. Before they reach the power plant, Mava notices a small shop she feels drawn to check out. "Do you guys mind if we stop by here?" Mava asks. She notices the knickknacks and items strung about in front of and inside the store. "Well, if we're going to do some shopping, I guess we should do it before we get to the power plant," Jindai says jokingly. They walk together into the small shop when Mava notices the coin from her bracelet sitting on one of the counters. "That coin," Mava says, walking over to it. "Where did you get that coin?" she asks the shopkeeper.
"Oh, that coin?"
The man replies.
"I think someone left it there. I've never seen it before. Doesn't look valuable. You can take it if you want. It's been there for a while. No idea where it came from."
"Thank you," Mava says, grabbing the coin and holding it tightly against her chest. Tears begin to well in her eyes. "Mava," Vorsha says telepathically, "that coin doesn't have the same energy as when you had it before. Remember when you thought you saw your father take it from you?" "What are you telling me?" Mava asks aloud. "Bring it to me and I can show you," Vorsha says. Mava presses the coin against Vorsha's amulet, and memories flood her mind. Memories resurface about what happened, and she remembers what she had blocked out. There was an unknown force in the temple, and Mava's father had come into contact with it. He was not the same afterward. He seemed to have completely lost his mind and wandered throughout the continent of Africa until he reached Zumaridi Mgi. He believed this was a place of salvation for his restless mind. It was there that he ultimately died. Mava sees in her mind a cliff with unmarked graves. She walks out of the shop toward the graves she saw in her mind without saying anything. Leandra, Jindai, and Vorsha follow closely, wondering where she's going. "Mava?" Leandra asks. Mava doesn't respond. She keeps walking up the hill and sees the unmarked graves from her mind. She realizes this is where her father was buried. She begins to cry, releasing her anger toward her father and the pain of not having a mother to hold on to. Leandra stands beside her and holds her as she cries out years of pain. She also releases anger toward herself, her father, and her mother, whom she never met. She realizes how much she misses her father and how she has pushed people away since he disappeared. Mava lets her guard down further and cries. Afterward, she feels the weight on her shoulders lift. "Why did I see him?" Mava asks. "Vorsha, what was I seeing all this time?" "Maybe it was your father's spirit," Vorsha replies, "still guiding you all this time." They embrace and remain at the graves for a while before remembering their mission. "At least we know where he is now, Mava," Leandra says, grabbing her shoulder and shedding a tear. "Yeah, you're right," Mava affirms. She turns, ready to complete their mission.